What if the chronic pain your body carries isn't weakness, but memory? What if breaking down is the beginning of becoming whole? Welcome to Unpolished Wisdom, a space for conversations that are beautifully imperfect, raw, unfinished, and deeply human. I'm Dr. Katrina Gisbert, medical doctor and executive well-being coach. Through my work, I help people navigate transitions with honesty, courage, and compassion. And today we sit with Dr. Suhina Singh, medical doctor, health tech founder, and CEO of Jonda Health, who grew up in apartheid South Africa, where danger was her baseline and self-protection became her identity. During the pandemic, chronic inflammation and unexplainable pain forced her into what she calls her first emotional education, a journey that revealed complex PTSD, possible neurodivergence, and a nervous system shaped by decades of hypervigilance. This is a conversation about what happens when your body refuses to let you keep running, about discovering that protection can become a prison, about the difference between fixing yourself and finally meeting yourself with wholeness. Welcome, Suhina, and thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, Kat. I'm so humbled and I'm so honored at the same time. I so deeply respect everything that you've been doing over the last couple of years, more than a couple of
We've
years.
known each other a
We've
while.
known each other for a while, so it just, it just is such a privilege to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. And we've discussed, the topics we're going to talk about on the podcast a little bit. And I just want to say give you a deep appreciation and gratitude for your sharing today, which I know is deeply personal and, perhaps something you haven't shared before in public. So thank you.
Thanks for that, Kat. I think it means a lot to me. I think if this can help someone else and support them on the journey, then that for me is an absolute gift.
Thank you. So, as I mentioned in my introduction, right, which is you're from South Africa and you grew up there during apartheid in an environment where danger was the norm. You grew up, in fear and it was your baseline. So I'm curious, as a child, if you go back to being a child at that time, what was it like growing up there, being in your body? And how did that impact the choices you made later on as an adult?
There's so much to that. But maybe I think let me start with like just some context, right?
Mhm.
Because I think when one is a child, you don't really fully understand, I think, what's going on perhaps in the subconscious mind of what you've been exposed to. And I think sometimes, I know this is very true for me, you don't realize that, oh, I was just 7, right? Until you see another 7-year-old and you're like, oh, and then you have some relatability as to what age is or what perhaps happened at a particular point in time. So some of the memories that I have and some of the ones that have been told to me. So I'll start first with the ones that were told to me, um, which was my mom and dad they wanted to take us to the beach. And my mom is really fair skinned, even though she's Indian. And my dad is darker skinned. And my mom, by mistake, landed up in a whites only beach by mistake. And she was with like my sister and myself, and my dad like couldn't come to find us because he got kicked off the beach. And, so that's really the real reality of a situation. And I think this is really important because there's also this generational component that comes in also when we're talking about living in apartheid South Africa as well. I think when we talk about like safety and how whether one felt safe or not, one of the memories I have from childhood, I don't remember how old I was. It was probably around 7 or 8, so pretty young actually. And I remember that there were these massive riots going on at the time, and back then in South Africa, the different uh, races always try to find the right word for it. But the different races were, everyone stayed in their own communities. All the Indians were in one area, all the colored people were in one area, like all the whites were in another area. So it was very segregated based on on race or ethnicity, whatever you want to call it. And so there were riots that had broken out. And I remember it was late at night and my dad had a gun and he was going to help to protect the local community with other men from the community to protect them, right? And I remember feeling really scared. I mean, actually, that's a memory I remember. I actually remember feeling scared. Well, first of all, because, it's my dad going out there and I don't know what any of this is. Second of all, that just put the whole family in a space of vulnerability and this place that's supposed to be safe. And it was relatively close to the area in which the place where we stayed, our home, right? So I think the reason why I share this is just so that people get a little bit of a sense of what that's like, right? Because when I talk about violence, it was so multifaceted, Kat, in so many ways. And I grew up living with what we called trelly doors.
Okay, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I don't think many people are. Okay. Do you know what it is?
Okay.
And it's basically like this security metal gate that helps to protect against intruders.
Okay.
Right, so I grew up in an environment where, when I left South Africa, I was like, oh, there's no trelly doors anywhere, right?
That's not everywhere in the world. It's just, it was just there. Okay.
Yeah, so actually later on in my life when I was a little bit older, and yeah, I mean, the violence was quite a big thing because a couple of my family members were murdered. So my aunt was murdered in Durban, and following that, when she passed away, my family basically installed these trelly doors, not just on the outside of the house to prevent entry from the outside to the inside, but they actually put trelly doors on the inside of the house. So when we went to bed, everything was the whole house on the outside. So there was the boundary wall, the security system, whatever else, and electric wires. And then you come in and then there's the trelly doors and then there's all the doors, all with its locks. And then if you went upstairs, the section of the house where my sister and I on one side and my parents and my brother on the other side, and in both of those sections, there was a trelly door again. So when I went to bed, I needed to make sure that I locked the trelly door and then also close my room door. And I'd always feel so scared that someone's going to break in, right?
Oh, gosh.
And so, yeah, it didn't feel very safe at all.
Yeah.
And I remember having a lot of nightmares that someone's going to break into the house. And then you read the news, and what do you see in the news? Yeah. It's the same thing, right? And if I fast forward a little bit, I'm going past childhood now, Kat.
Yes.
But so when I was practicing as well as a physician, even as a medical student, to be honest, I mean, the stuff that you would see or be exposed to when it came to violence was quite a bit.
Yes.
I remember going once to do a shift for maternity because we needed to deliver a certain number of babies. You know what that's like. Mm-hmm. So off I went to this place thinking, oh, okay, great, all sorted. I didn't bring food with me and it was an overnight. And I thought that's fine because back then we had something which is Mr. Delivery, which is the equivalent of Uber Eats or Grab. But it was just, it was a telephone call and a book, right? It was way back when. Yeah. So I remember thinking, okay, time for dinner. Actually, even before I get to the time for dinner part, I enter and I was like, oh, this is odd. There's a metal detector to get into the hospital. And I was like, okay. Then I call Mr. Delivery and I say, oh, okay, I want to order food. They're like, sorry, we don't order. It's too dangerous. And I'm thinking to myself, what am I doing here?
Oh, wow. And so that leads to my question, right? Which is, you grew up with a need for constant self-protection. Yeah. And what did that teach you about who you needed to be or how you needed to live your life, even after you left South Africa?
It taught me to always watch my back, to always be on high alert. I spent most of my life, Kat, living from a place of extreme fear and not feeling safe in any environment, right? Mm-hmm. A single thud somewhere, and I'd be automatically there's this going into brace and anxiety
Just shoots up.
just these huge peaks of anxiety very quickly, which for another normal person, they wouldn't get as frightened or as anxious. So I spent a lot of my life incredibly anxious, even as young as 6, 7. And I had a lot of health issues back then. And I think a lot of it was also related to the anxiety as well.
How did the hypervigilance influence the choices you make in terms of the career, where you moved to, who you married?
Oh, wow. Gosh, it influenced so many things, to be honest. I think in choice of career, I don't think it influenced it too much. But definitely, I think, being so fearful and then going and studying medicine was probably not the best idea in retrospect. And I say that because, like, I felt so petrified every time I did something, right? I was always on edge. I was always super anxious, right? Because I'm like, oh my gosh, now I'm responsible for like someone's life.
Yeah.
And like, that's a huge pressure. And I think on the background of everything, I also had this thing of this fear of failure or of getting something wrong as well. And I think a lot of that was linked to competence. So I had tied my identity in many ways to competence and self-worth, which is pretty challenging. I would say it's still something that's in the process of unraveling, Kat. But when I look back, I think it's pretty clear. I mean, during apartheid, it's very clear that, like, if you look generationally, the only way was education or like whatever. Like competence became, it was for survival.
Yeah.
It wasn't it was survival. Competence was survival. You're either or you don't, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you. And that feels like a lot to carry for a small child and even as an adult. And I remember you telling me that during the pandemic, your body essentially staged an intervention, so to speak. The chronic inflammation, the pain, the systemic burnout, and, you've called this your accidental healing journey and your first emotional education. What did your body teach you then that medical school never could?
That's a great question. I think my body was always speaking to me because I had health conditions from when I was really young. And I didn't know that it was trying to speak to me. So first of all, I didn't respect my body, first and foremost, and I didn't appreciate the intelligence of the body itself. During the time that I got diagnosed, I was doing my executive MBA at INSEAD, and it was COVID as well. So it was super high pressure, and I was all alone here as well, right? So the perfect storm in some ways. I really landed up, and I don't think I probably really realized it at the time. I think I really felt pretty depressed, to be honest, and I wasn't really aware. The accidental healing came in because, I was just pushing through because that's the only way I knew how. I didn't know any other way, Kat. And, there were times when I was dealing with the illness that I really felt like, oh my gosh, why can't I just have a normal body like everyone else, right? And not really appreciate that my body was really trying to tell me something. What happened was I was starting to feel very frustrated while I was leading the company, the startup. And I got to a point where, I don't know, call it divine intervention, if you will. I like to call it divine intervention.
Yes, please do. Yeah.
I literally, woke up one day and I had this thought that, wow, to lead others, I really needed to learn how to lead myself, right? And I realized that everything just seems to be a mirror. And I think, you read a lot of spiritual texts and it's exactly what it says.
Yeah.
So because the that overachiever part of me that, really wanting to be able to make a difference, really wanting to give back, that's what drove me, not the health stuff. I was like, I was just resigned to the fact that I couldn't do anything about it, right? Because I saw so many physicians and they're like, yeah, okay, you have an autoimmune condition. Yeah, sorry, bye-bye.
Yeah, just deal with it, basically.
Yeah, yes. I mean, I hate to put it that way,
Yeah, but
but
it is.
yeah, pretty much, yes.
Yeah, and you have to deal with it for the rest of your life. Just take something to feel a little better. Take some pain reliever. Take some steroids. And then what, though?
Absolutely. Do you know what? It felt like someone was giving you, and this sounds extreme, but it kind of felt like someone was giving me a death sentence for the rest of
Yeah.
my life. They're like, here you go. This is what you need to live with. And I mean, that's really like, one can talk about acceptance and all of these things, but it was really like really, there's like nothing. Like, just
Yeah.
here you go. Like, deal with it. And when I was in so much of pain, I used to wake up in the middle of the night. I used to inject myself every 2 weeks with a biologic. It was not easy. But once again, that's not what got me down the healing path. I landed up seeing this course, and in this course, they talked about leadership and stuff like that, and it was called Journey of Humanity. And so I did that, and yeah, pretty much my whole life changed. I did the first part, and I was like, wow, this is really interesting. In the first part of doing the course, I realized I don't know how to love myself. And I realized I didn't know how to receive love from some of these exercises. And it was pretty profound all of a sudden. I didn't expect it. And I thought, oh, wow, this is great. And I felt a lot better and I felt a lot lighter. And I thought, oh, okay, this is great. I'm going to do part 2. And so I did part 2. Part 2 for me was something that I will never forget. And I'm be forever grateful for it. And for me, in some ways, it kind of felt miraculous. And I think it sounds so weird saying that coming from like the medical profession, Kat.
No, I don't. I disagree. I get what you're saying, but I totally feel and understand what you're saying, that it was miraculous at that point. It was an intervention, definitely divine intervention, as you said.
Yes.
So
No,
what
100%.
happened?
Yeah. So when I was doing the second part of this, and everyone was talking about, we're doing these exercises around like I don't know, they were exercises, And I was like, oh, my hands are warm. And the guys were like, oh my gosh, you feel energy for the first time. And I was like, oh my gosh, wackos. Like, I have no clue what you guys are on about. And I was like, it's normal to feel heat in the hands. There's a scientific explanation for all of this. So that night I went to bed, Kat, and I felt energy surging throughout my whole body. And I will never forget it. And I woke up the next morning and I went to the guys and I was like really humbled, because you actually don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And I think I wouldn't be able to have this conversation if I didn't experience it myself. Because then I was like, you're right. There is energy. And then I started to realize, oh, wait, actually, everything is energy.
Yeah.
Scientifically proven.
Yep. Physics. Yep.
Exactly, right? It's not woo-woo at all. Everything is scientifically energy.
Yes.
But I think the big thing for me was I think it was the second or the third day, we did this exercise on, claiming different things and, combining different emotions, etc. And so I combined mastery with forgiveness. And the guy that was leading the course, he goes, oh, that's really apt for you. And I was like, oh, okay. The next day I woke up, Kat, and I felt like a completely different person. Because when I stood up that day, the next morning, the world seemed like a much clearer place. It looked like it was in high definition. All of a sudden, I felt so much lighter, and I had flexibility that I have never had before in my spine. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what just happened?
Yeah.
I went to the gym 2 days later, and my personal trainer was like, how are you lifting 20% heavier weights? Like, because he goes, like, 5 days ago, you couldn't do that. So
That's
something,
amazing.
yeah, right?
That's amazing.
And for me, the big thing there was forgiveness and compassion.
Yes. So, okay. So when you said that, I'm like, we need to talk about this. Okay. So forgiveness and the part it plays in the healing journey. I want you to talk a bit more about that.
Oh gosh, it's so fundamental, right? For me. And it's something I advocate for really deeply because I was so harsh on myself, Kat. Not only was I building resentment towards myself, but I was also building resentment towards other people because actually how we treat ourselves is how we actually treat other people. So if we're judging ourselves, and I know that I judged people a lot. I did. I am not afraid to say it. I did. And in knowing that, and I'm like, I know that I would have judged myself a million X worse. So just so that I understood for me also what that gravitas of what I was doing to myself, right? So if you're sitting there throwing like arrows at someone, I can tell you now that like there's a million arrows pointed right back at you, and that's you towards you, right? And that was definitely the case in my situation. So for me, it was really forgiveness to self for just the harsh criticism of always beating myself up, of always, pushing myself to the extreme. But more importantly for me, Kat, was also forgiving my body. I get really emotional when I talk about it because, I wouldn't be here having this conversation with you if I wasn't in this form. And, just forgiving my body because it was really trying to communicate that something wasn't okay. Um, and it was been trying to tell me that, gosh, for the longest time. And I just didn't know. And that's something that we don't get taught in medical school. It's almost like the body is something to just fix, right?
Yep.
And, but not really listening to the body. What is the body trying to tell me? And I think that for me has been a pretty big shift. And even to this day, right now, every morning and night, I always say thank you to my body for the day, and I thank all my cells, and just thank all of it, right,
Yeah.
for being able to be in existence in this form.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And I want to backtrack a little bit, if I may, because you talked about forgiving your body, for not listening to it, right? For the times when it was whispering in the beginning and eventually it was screaming at you with the pain and the inflammation. But also, on the other hand, and I've known you for a while now, we've been friends for a while now, and you're a model, you're a speaker, you're out in the world, you're very confident, you've done so well. And I wanted to highlight that too for everyone because I think it also shows that what we see up on stage is not necessarily what's going on for people inside.
I'm so happy you brought that up, Kat, and I think that's so true. I think I was a master of performance,
Mm.
really, because performance for me is linked to competence, and performance for me was linked to self-worth. And for me, there was an underlying story that I needed to prove that I was worthy of love. And so to prove that I was worthy of love then meant being a hell of a good performer, Cat. A really good one. And yeah, I think, I grew up in an environment where you don't air your dirty laundry per se, or you don't talk about these things. And I think mental health had also a big sort of like taboo around it, right?
Yeah.
And so then you don't ever land up actually handling any of this, right? And you know my story as well. I tried to kill myself twice, sexually assaulted. And to think that, I'm 44 this year, and I only dealt with that stuff like 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy. I was holding all of that for the longest time until my body was like, eh.
Yeah.
And even then, I wouldn't have put it back to like the traumatic experiences that I had. Gabor Mate talks about the big T and the small t. Yeah, I understand the big T pretty well, but I hadn't addressed it, and I also didn't realize the aspects around the small T's that really affect how you show up, and how it affects your body most importantly.
No, definitely. And so you said 2 years ago, you finally started looking at this and paying attention and noticing. So what did you do to shift things?
It's a great question. I think for me, it was really around practicing awareness. But for me, it was awareness of emotions. That's where I kind of started, to be honest.
Yeah.
So first is compassion, and the second one for me was really around emotions, because I didn't know what I was feeling at any given point in
Okay,
time.
what do you mean by that? What do you mean you don't know what you were feeling?
So I would describe myself like 5 years or 6 years ago. I remember having like probably around 5 years ago, because it was around at the time I was doing INSEAD, and I had some friends over, and I was like, I don't really feel emotions. And they're like, what are you talking about? Of course you feel emotions. And I was like, no, but I don't really feel emotions. So I already knew back then that I wasn't actually feeling. And everyone told me, no, of course you feel emotions. And I was like, I don't think I do. The extent to which I was feeling things, I wasn't really sure what I was feeling. And so I got this thing which is called like the wheel of emotion. I don't know how that landed in my sphere, but it did anyway.
Okay.
It's great.
Yeah.
I love it. And as I was going through that, I realized, oh, like there's so many more emotions than just like anger or this or like sadness and happiness, that there's more. I know it sounds silly, but like I didn't associate frustration with anger.
Oh, okay. Got it. Okay,
I
I'm
didn't
understanding
realize
it.
that was anger.
Yeah.
I was like, oh wow, this is like a revelation. I never wanted to admit that, like, I held resentment, A, to myself, and B, towards other people, right?
Mm.
So all of a sudden I'm learning like, oh gosh, there's emotions that I didn't understand.
And so what did bringing in new distinctions in emotions support you with?
It helped me to be able to like let go of the emotion and not actually be able to hold it in, right? So I think when we're talking about processing emotions, it also allows you to understand like what's running through you at that point in time, right? For me, there was a lot of self-silencing
Mm.
and like suppressing the emotions in order to just, be able to move through. But sometimes the emotions are really telling you something that's valid, or you don't realize that actually maybe you're reacting from your amygdala and not your like prefrontal cortex.
Yeah.
Um, and I'll leave that for you to explain to the audience, because I think you'll do a better job
Yeah.
at explaining what I mean when I'm talking about amygdala and
Yeah.
prefrontal cortex.
Yeah. And the short version of it is actually understanding where is the emotion coming from. Are you able to make a different choice?
Yeah.
Or is it a reaction? Can you convert it from a reaction to a response?
Oh, absolutely. Because the amygdala is all like fight, flight,
Exactly.
freeze. And the prefrontal cortex is really that executive decision making and really choosing how we respond. So if you don't know what emotion is coming up, you're not acknowledging it, right?
Yes.
And I think when you acknowledge something, it has no, it can't stay. It's acknowledged. And actually, emotions just want to be acknowledged, to be quite frank.
Yeah.
And you can feel your shift in energetic state almost immediately when you put the word to it, right? Now I'm learning not to label them as much, but in the beginning, it was a really great way for
Of
me to be
course.
able to understand what am I feeling?
Yeah.
Because I wasn't taught that in school. I don't know about you.
No, I wasn't either. And we weren't taught that in medical school either.
I definitely not taught that in medical school at all. I always wonder when I do these podcasts or I talk about like emotions, because for me, I feel like emotion is energy in motion.
Yeah.
And I really wonder what maybe sometimes some of my colleagues and stuff must be thinking, like what happened to Suhina. But, that's okay. This is my lived experience. And, I've really come to believe that there's so much that we don't understand. And when it comes to mind, body, spirit, I think, we're still just scratching the surface
Oh,
in many ways.
Totally. And let's connect a bit the distinctions in emotions with what was happening for you somatically in your body. So tell me a bit more about how you've come to terms with defining the emotions And also noticing that by you did this, right? Pushing it all down, all the emotions down, your body took it, right? Instead of somewhere else. It kind of took all of that emotions in.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically you're creating, if something has no place to flow, you're just like, and your container or something is so big and you keep putting more and more stuff in. I mean, you're creating pressure.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that, right? You kind of need to allow the emotions to move. And the thing is, when you suppress them for very long, at some point, you actually just explode.
Yeah.
Because there has to be a release because there's no way it can contain anymore and the pressure is too much.
Yeah.
And then you'll have moments when you just explode, right? And that's happened to me when I was younger. You just
like lose it.
You lose it
basically.
completely.
Yeah.
Which is also okay. I mean, it happens. We're human.
Yeah. No, totally. And let's go back a little bit to, our medical school training. And I want to talk about that because I think it's quite significant in terms of how I've learned to process my emotions. And this was when I was 20 odd years ago, right? Which is we deal with these complex situations, gut wrenching, people in accidents and people dying. And we're taught that we can't display our emotions, right? We're taught that, okay, now you got to see the next patient. And you need to be okay for the next patient. And you need to leave that behind. And it does make me wonder, what's the emotional turmoil or the damage that happens when we don't process that?
You know what, Kat, I think it's really significant. And I think, there was, in this whole like journey of just reflecting back, I remember going for this walk and then coming back home and I burst into tears. I burst into tears for all the stuff that I saw, all the stuff that I didn't process, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't just me. I went to my 20-year like reunion last year in South Africa and we were all talking about some of the things that we were exposed to, that we saw, and we were really young back then. And I know it doesn't seem like it, but like, we were maybe 19, 20, in the early stage of med school. And even then, your first year, practicing as a physician, you're 24?
Yeah.
I mean, and no one's told you how to deal with any of the stuff. And, like you rightly said, I was carrying all of that. And I think there's an additional part actually to what we studied, and which is kind of funny because we did study healthcare and how to keep people healthy. Was 2 weeks ago, I was actually in Sydney and I was listening to someone and she was talking about burnout, also a fellow physician. And, she was giving the story where she was working really late nights on call and she was just living off like Coke and sugar, essentially. I think we can all relate,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And then at some point, like she was asking the nurse the same question like a couple of times, and the nurse turned around and said, "Are you okay?" And then she realized, "Wait, shit, I'm not." And actually, it's burnout. And I think the key message she was giving, and I didn't realize it until she said it, where she was saying, when she was studying, and the same applied to me, that you learn how to override your body. What your body's really telling you, I need to rest, and you just override it.
Yeah, you say, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. So for the longest time, I mean, I was living off like maybe 5-6 coffees a day, just eating like whatever. And that, only that habit was up until like a couple of years ago. So yeah, I mean, it's something that you keep not listening to the body, and then keep shutting it down, and you just push yourself further away from optimal well-being.
Yeah, no, totally. And we have similar stories, right? Which is for me happened earlier, which in my early 30s where I got autoimmune disease. And for me, it was the realization too and the acknowledgement that I had put my body through so much. And I had never learned to properly rest and to properly recover. And I think most of us, not just doctors, but most of us who are, a lot of people who are high achievers, they want to, get to the top of the ladder. That's not in the vocabulary. It's not even an option for other people.
Yeah, I mean, I think but it's also part of these cultural, as much as I mean, I guess, we can choose which expectations, etc., right? And it is a choice. I still believe
Yeah,
it's a
for
choice.
sure. Yeah.
Uh, and at the same time, we've grown up in cultures where this is sort of it's what's expected, right? Like there is no, you don't see anything else, right? This is what you see. So like,
That's
yeah,
that's what's role modeled. Right.
exactly.
That's
That's the
it's
word I was
exactly.
looking for.
That's what's
Yes.
role modeled. That's and I know I've seen that with my family who are high achievers and for some people, I have to say, for some people it works. What do I mean? They don't end up getting autoimmune disease. So not everybody does. There are some people who I would say in quotes, they still function well, or maybe they have their own way to cope. But I think the message that I want to give here is everybody handles it differently.
100%.
And are you noticing for yourself? Are you acknowledging what your body, what your mind, what your soul is telling you? And I think that's what a lot of people miss.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think you've put that really beautifully. 100%.
Yeah. So, if it's okay, I'm going to shift a little bit into the recent diagnosis that you had, the complex PTSD and the possible neurodivergence. They weren't just medical diagnosis for you, but they were names for what you had been experiencing, what had been true for you all along. What changed when you could finally name what you were carrying?
Oh, wow. This is going to make me, I think, feel like I'm going to cry now. But I think one of the things for me was, Kat, I really felt for the first time like there's nothing wrong with me. And I know it sounds really bizarre when you say, these diagnoses. And I think, for me, I'm trying to also stay away from too much of labeling, but I would say there were certain behaviors or experiences that, um, I think that sort of, encapsulates really well, right? So, by the way, there's a correlation between like neurodivergence and complex PTSD, and there's like a lot of overlap and stuff like that. But I think just having that or knowing that,
Yeah.
in some ways, it was like, I guess in some ways I kind of felt like I was crazy or there was something wrong with me. And then in some way I was like, oh, there's nothing wrong with me. Because I could never understand how come everyone else, and once again, it's a perception thing, right? Because like you go around and so many people wear masks. I mean, I was wearing masks as well. And, I'd go around thinking, well, everyone else looks fine. How come I have this like inner turmoil that I can't quite sort of understand? But I did realize, like, I would get anxious over just writing an email, Kat, to ensure that it was perfect, right? How you can't go through life like that. I would be anxious over writing a really simple email. And I would never express that to anyone because like I didn't feel like it was something I could speak about because I looked around me and I'm like, other people are writing emails and not getting anxious writing a simple email. And then I double and triple check the email to make sure there's not a mistake. Like I said, a lot of like pressure and anxiety to live with, like almost no grace for self whatsoever.
Yeah.
You can't live like that. And I think that for me, that's why like the diagnosis for me, I was like, oh, and it helped me to understand, I mentioned earlier the big T and the small T traumas.
Yep.
And so it helped me to understand, oh, actually there were a bunch of small T traumas that clearly led to that. No wonder why there's like the nervous system braces the way that it does. But yeah, I mean, it's been pretty insightful. Yeah,
So understanding it, so naming it allowed you to understand yourself and your behaviors a lot more.
100%. 100%. And also, I think, appreciate some of the things that had happened in the past. Because I think in some cases, this is the case for me, I had normalized things which were not okay.
Okay.
I was watching the America's Next Top Model, the reality check. Have you watched it?
No, I haven't.
Not yet. Yeah, I mean, I watched that, and it was in so many ways such a rude awakening, because I was in the modeling industry, and a lot of what these girls spoke about, I had experienced firsthand, and I had just thought it was normal. But watching it now with the lens and the knowledge of today, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was so toxic. That was such an unhealthy environment to be in. And so when we talk about these small t traumas, they're really like these, you get enough, like, you don't need to have like a machete or something, but like enough small dots and, throughout your life,
It's
it's
gonna,
small t trauma, right?
yeah, no, for sure. And so now that you've have these distinctions and the neurodivergence and PTSD, you're able to piece things together. What makes sense for you now that didn't before?
I think what makes sense for me now is that it's okay to not be okay. And I think for me, it just allowed me to extend more compassion to myself, Kat, than ever before, and to others. And also to realize that it's okay to function differently.
Yeah.
I mean, look, there are times I feel really frustrated because I just, I kind of wish, like, I could be in a certain way. And then I come back to, it's okay. I just need to, for me, it's about making the world work for me.
Yeah.
Right. And not the other way around. Because I spent most of my life trying to fit into the mold of what is expected, and it doesn't fit. I mean, I did the same thing in modeling, right? I was modeling at a time where there weren't that many people of like darker skin, especially when I was modeling in Italy at the time. And you needed to be like a size 0, and I clearly was not, right? I had my proportions were very different. And I was trying to do everything to fit into a certain mold.
Yeah.
And looking back at it now, I kind of can't help but laugh because, like, it's impossible to change your body structure to be something else and then to feel frustrated with your body. But, like, I mean, like, you can't be something that you're not.
Yeah.
And I think that's also the beauty of the, of knowing that as well. It's just appreciating is that, like, I don't function that way.
Yeah.
I don't function the way maybe someone else does. And that's okay.
Yeah. And what's coming up for me is acceptance and grace.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. And if I may share, and like I said, Suhina and I have known each other for several years now, quite a while. I've never seen you happier.
Now, thank you.
There's a
means
lot
to me.
more lightness to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. So, yeah, I wanted to share that.
No, thank you for that. No, I do. I feel I've never felt as light and as happy as I do today. Like, I still have a lot of moments of going through like some really deep moments. And that's okay. I just say that it's part of the process. Do I still get triggered? Yes. Part of the process. And that's okay.
Yeah. You talk about returning to yourself, finding yourself again. What does that mean, right? When the self you're returning to is also the one who's experienced the trauma, the abuse, and the pain and the inflammation. So what does that mean for you now? Return to self.
The return to self for me is not abandoning myself, Kat, and really listening to myself and listening to my body or the inner child and holding space for myself in so many ways and extending myself that same grace, right? I think before I was really in like, there was a constant war on the inside, a really big one,
Yeah.
to say the least.
Yeah.
But, and I was just like, oh, I need to be fearless. I need to be fearless. I need to be fearless. But maybe it's just about acknowledging the fear and embracing it, right? Because then it has no hold over you anyway, right? Because behind that fear is just a really hurt past version of self. And I think that for me has been pretty key.
For sure.
And I think not abandoning self is really important and learning how to establish boundaries.
That's a big one. And energetic boundaries too.
Oh, no, 100%, 100%.
Yeah.
And I think, we don't realize that in our everyday conversations, what is actually being communicated at any given point in time. And I think just even building that awareness of like how we communicate and how we're responding back. Are we really expressing our needs? Are we really standing up for ourselves? If it was someone else, I think, I read this somewhere and it was saying, well, if it was someone else, would you stand up for them? And if the answer is yes, then why wouldn't you stand up for yourself in the same situation?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. I love what you said. And you also talk about flow and surrender at the same time.
Yes.
So moving with the universe rather than against it, right? It's not a destination, it's a practice. But what does that practice of flow and surrender look like for you now?
Oh, wow. It's changed my life, Kat, in so many ways. So, if I'm late somewhere or someone else is late, I always give thanks. And I know it sounds pretty strange, but I give thanks because I don't know the whole picture.
Mm-hmm.
I only know what I know. Something comes my way, I will feel disappointed. And at the same time, I will recognize that and remind myself it's okay. And I will say thank you because the universe always has my back because life happens for me, not to me.
Yes.
And even in the really challenging times, I will tell myself, thank you. Even in the darkest of the moments, I will say thank you because I know that that is an opportunity to grow and to evolve. And just by saying thank you allows me to extend so much grace to myself. And energetically, instead of being like this, I just feel like I'm open again. And it allows me to just have a deeper sense of surrender and a deeper sense of faith than I've ever had before. And so for me, that's what flow is, and you think of someone and then they're calling you and then something, and you're just like, when you see flow around you and you're just like, wow, isn't the universe such a beautiful place? And, sometimes when something happens and it can be seen as something negative at the time. And it's funny because it's always happened to me. I look back a year later and I was like, oh my gosh, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. I don't know if you've experienced that too.
Oh, for sure. Yes.
It's all of these things. And then, you can't help but say, thank you.
Yeah.
And I think by the same token, as much as I've experienced so much, Kat, I also say, thank you because from all of those experiences, if being on this show supports even just one person on their journey, then definitely it's already been a life that's been really well lived. And for that, I'm grateful, and I'm really grateful to be that vessel.
You're going to make me cry on my show. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Oh, that was so beautifully said. And that takes me back really to why I created the show. It was, I don't know if I've shared this with you, but I never created the show because of the show. I never created a podcast to make a podcast, which is weird, right? When you think about it. But the podcast was created as a vehicle, one, for me to also get over the fear of being out there, of putting myself out there, right? So be in that practice. We talk about practice. You can't be, you have to practice it. You have to do it every day. And the second thing, the reason why I did this podcast was really because exactly what you said, which is if we could talk about the messy parts of life, to not just show what social media wants us to see, that everything is perfect, everything is perfectly fine, everybody's having beautiful lives except me. It isn't real.
That's not real at all.
It's not real at all. But actually, how could we bring out and share with other people just what it is to be really human? That we're not perfect, that we're messy, imperfect beings, and that's okay.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. So just to close, my last question that I ask all of my guests, okay, is if you could hold space for your past self now, what would you say to them?
I would tell them that it's okay. Um, and I'm here to listen to whatever you want to say. And it's okay. And I'm here. I'm listening and I'm here for you. Um, for me to hold space to that younger version of myself would be just allowing them the space to feel heard and feel validated. And I think that for me is really key.
Thank you. This was such a wonderful conversation. I love you.
I love you too.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation with Dr. Suhina Singh. If this episode spoke to you, please follow the show and share it with someone navigating their own journey from armor to awareness. This is Unpolished Wisdom. Until next time.